She stood in a filthy alley with a stolen apple, garbage at her feet, daring a man who could have ended her right then to take it from her. 20 years later, that same girl gripped a gavel in a federal courtroom, and she didn't hand him his fate until the truth finally broke through all the lies built against him. Some debts you pay with cash. Others you pay with silence, mercy, or a verdict nobody in that courtroom saw coming. If you're already leaning in to hear where this is headed, hit subscribe. The story starts next, and it starts back in that alley, smelling like rust and rot, where a little girl stood her ground, instead of running from a monster. Don't miss it. The city loved to hide its darkest deals down its ugliest backstreets, and this alley had more than earned its reputation. Shards of glass caught whatever scraps of sunlight edged between buildings. The stink of old, rotting trash, weeks uncollected, lingered in the air. Roman Greer strode through, like he owned the place, and in all the ways that counted, he did. He'd just wrapped up a talk with a man who wouldn't be having many more conversations, a kind of business Roman always handled himself when people needed reminding who was in charge. His knuckles stung, his jacket still cold from the concrete wall. He was ready to leave the alley behind and not look back. That's when he heard it, a tiny, fearless voice that didn't belong in a place like this. He turned, spotted a girl, 8 maybe, pinned to a brick wall, clutching an apple like it was the only thing standing between her and hunger. Her clothes hung in rags, her hair tangled and dirty, but her eyes, those stopped him. He hadn't seen a look like that in years. Grown men, some twice her size and holding weapons, didn't meet his gaze the way she did. She looked at him like he was a storm, and she'd already decided not to run. Roman had faced rival bosses, bent cops, and men who dreamed of killing him slow. None had ever looked at him quite like this kid did. He crouched, slow, hands out where she could see, like he was trying to calm a trapped animal. "That apple yours?" She didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her voice didn't shake. "It's mine now." Something about the way she said it, flat, bold, made the edge of Roman's mouth twitch, though honestly, there was nothing funny about a starving kid hugging a piece of fruit like her life depended on it. He reached inside his coat, making sure she could see every move, and when his hand came back out, he wasn't threatening her. What followed set them both on a crash course that would take 20 years, a trial, and a fire that should have never been started to finally bring their story full circle. Roman liked things quiet and final. No drama, no speeches, no blood on his shoes. He'd walked into the alley an hour ago with 2 men and a supplier who thought stealing from him was something you could get away with. Roman left alone. His guys were already off finishing up, and he was mentally on to the next problem, not planning to slow down for anyone. Definitely not for a kid with an apple. She was just standing there, not moving, not scared, even when he crouched down to her level. That caught his attention. Most adults in his world panicked when he so much as looked their way. "You're not scared of me," he said. "Should I be?" He almost smiled. It'd been a long time since anyone, never mind a kid, surprised him like that. Most people are. Most people haven't been hungrier than they've been scared. She said it flat, like it was just something she'd learned. No drama, no wanting pity, just the hard, ugly truth. Roman looked her over. Big coat that was probably a hand-me-down of a hand-me-down, shoes barely shoes anymore, and that apple? She hugged it to her chest like it was her whole world. "Where are your parents?" Something flickered in her eyes, gone before he could pin it down. She lifted her chin, defiant. "Don't have any. Everyone's got parents somewhere. Not the kind that matter." Roman had heard every sob story you could imagine, most of them faked, or at least polished up for effect. This girl wasn't performing for him. She didn't even seem to care if he stayed or walked away. She had her apple, a wall at her back, and she was set. "That apple worth defending? It's the only thing I've eaten today. You steal it?" "Wouldn't you?" That landed. He'd built his life on doing worse than stealing fruit, and she'd just called it as she saw it. Roman reached into his jacket, slowly. Now she tensed, ready to bolt or fight, whichever worked. But he didn't pull out a weapon or a wad of cash. His hand was empty. He just held it out, palm up, not asking for anything, not taking what wasn't his. "Keep the apple." She blinked, surprised, and for the first time, her tough shell cracked a bit. "That's it? You're not gonna try to take it? Doesn't seem fair. You only get one thing today and I take it? You're a weird man." "Yeah, I hear that a lot." She squinted at him, summing him up the way he had her. His coat, the heavy rings, the hint of tattoos snaking up from his collar. She didn't run, though. That said enough. You got a name? Zora. Just Zora? Don't need more than one name when nobody's calling you for dinner. He felt something shift inside. Small, strange, and uninvited. Roman had spent his life building up walls nobody could get through. But here was a kid with her own walls and just a stolen apple. And somehow, she was getting under his skin. You got somewhere to sleep tonight, Zora? She shrugged, but the gesture said everything. I manage. That's not what I asked. For a second, her tough act slipped, and he caught a glimpse of exactly what she was hiding. A tired, skinny kid who'd been taking care of herself far too long. Not really, no. Roman stood, dusted himself off, watched her like he was figuring out a lock. Come with me. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, he said. There was no point lying to her. But you can have a hot meal. If you don't like where I take you, you can leave. I won't stop you. She stared at him, apple pressed to her chest, weighing it all up. That was a big decision for anyone, a massive one for a kid in a dirty alley at dusk. After a few seconds, she took a step forward. Neither of them could know it, but that was the step that would change everything. It started them down a path that would somehow, one day, end in a courtroom, way beyond anything they could see tonight. The mansion Roman brought her to that first night felt endless. Zora lost count of the rooms after 10. For weeks she kept thinking she'd wake up under a bridge again, the whole place just a hunger-fueled dream. But each morning she opened her eyes and realized, no, she really was here, living a life that didn't seem possible back when an apple was all she owned. Roman gave her everything money could buy, private lessons instead of huge classrooms, a closet stuffed with clothes, a bedroom bigger than any home she'd slept in before. What he couldn't buy, though, no matter how much cash he threw at it, was her forgiveness for how he earned it all. By 13, Zora quit pretending she didn't know who Roman really was. She heard the low voices through the walls at midnight, watched strange men come and go at hours that didn't fit any normal job, noticed how rooms would suddenly go quiet as soon as she appeared. She was nobody's fool, and she wouldn't let anyone treat her like one. You think I don't know what happens in your office at 3 a.m, she asked one night. Roman didn't even look surprised. He'd clearly been waiting for this moment. That isn't something you need to worry about. She crossed her arms. I live here, Roman. I can't just pretend I don't notice. She'd been calling him Roman since she was 12, skipping Dad because that word never seemed to fit the man she actually saw, not the one he wished he was. Roman let her. He knew he hadn't earned that title. I keep you away from it on purpose, Zora. She shook her head. But I live in a house paid for by it. That isn't the same thing. He didn't answer, because she was right and there wasn't anything to say to that. The resentment didn't show up overnight. It crept in, built up one overheard conversation at a time, one glance at his bruised hands at breakfast, one news story where she recognized a name, someone mentioned in connection with violence that always traced back, somehow, to Roman. They found a body near the docks last night, she said one morning, poking at her cereal. Roman stared into his mug, not looking up. I saw. Did you know him? He didn't answer, just said her name. Zora. Did you know him, Roman? This time, the silence was all the answer she needed. She shoved her chair back hard, loud against the marble. I can't pretend this is normal, Roman. I can't sit here and eat like it is. Nothing about this is normal, he said quietly. I never said it was. She glared at him, then stopped trying to drown my questions in nice things and tutors, as if that'll make me forget what pays for them. He set his cup down, careful and slow. For a second, some pleading showed in his face, an expression nobody else ever saw. I didn't bring you here to make you like me. Then why did you? Roman hesitated, like he'd been searching for an answer for years, and still hadn't found one that really fit. He finally said, because you looked at me in that alley without any fear. I hadn't seen that in a long time. Zora's eyes narrowed. That's not an answer. That's a compliment. It's the truth. She studied him, same way she had on that first night, testing whether she believed the man who fed her was the same man who made people disappear in alleys like the one she came from. The truth is you liked that I wasn't scared of you, and now you hate that I can't pretend you're someone you're not, just to make things easier. He didn't argue. He knew there was no point. As the months rolled by, the silence between them thickened. Whole dinners eaten with barely a word. Some weeks went by with nothing but the sound of forks scraping plates. Roman handed her every resource he could think of, and Zora grabbed them all, carving out her own path, as far away from his world as she could get. She read law books like they were survival guides, searching for an answer to everything that made her angry. "You're always reading those law books," Roman said one evening. She didn't look up. Someone here should understand the difference between right and wrong. He took it, same way he took all her remarks now, showing nothing, even though each one chipped away at him. He asked, "You going to use all that law against me someday?" She kept her eyes on the page. "I'm learning so I never have to rely on someone like you again." Roman just nodded. He didn't say anything else, but later, in the quiet, her words sank in deeper than he wanted to admit. He'd come to realize that one day, all the money, all the silence, it wouldn't be enough. One day, everything he'd given her might be exactly what took her away. By the time Zora turned 18, there was nothing left to say. Silence settled in the house and hardened around them, untouched and undisturbed. And when the acceptance letter arrived, one of the top law schools in the country, she didn't wait for anyone to celebrate, especially not the man who'd raised her. She filled 2 suitcases, left the closet full of dresses he'd bought, and walked out the front door without asking him for a single dollar. He caught her before she left, just like she knew he would. "You could let me help," Roman said. He stood in the doorway, watching her zip everything up, but the usual weight in his voice was gone. He sounded tired instead. "I don't want your help. It's just money, Zora." She shook her head. "It's never just money with you, and you know that." She set the suitcase by the door and kept her eyes on his face for just a second, no more, afraid that if she looked too long, she'd crack. "I got a full scholarship. I earned it. My grades, my work. Your empire didn't touch any of it. I'm proud of you for that." She stared right through him. "I don't need you to be proud of me." The words came out hard, and she saw him flinch, just slightly, but she didn't take them back. "What do you need from me, then?" She actually paused, really looked at him. For one brief second, her walls dropped, but then she built them back up, quick as ever. "Nothing. That's the whole point. I need nothing from you." Roman just leaned into the doorframe, arms crossed over his chest, like it took all his strength to hold himself up. "So you're going to walk out that door and never look back?" "I'm leaving so I never have to explain, not ever again, why my father's name keeps popping up in the news or police reports. I'm not your father, remember?" She winced, her old defense thrown back at her, but her face hardened up again. "No, you're the man who fed me when I was starving, and I'll always be grateful for that. But I can't build a life standing next to a man who profits from other people's pain, Roman. Not anymore. You think I don't know what I am? I think you know exactly what you are. You found peace with it. I never will." Neither one spoke for a while. The silence hung heavy, louder, somehow, than any argument. "So that's it? I paid for everything for 20 years and it never bought me a single ounce of your love?" Saying it seemed to drain him. For just a moment, guilt flashed across Zora's face, but she kept going. "You didn't need to buy anything, Roman. You could have just been different. Some of us don't get to choose who we become." She kept her voice steady. "Everyone chooses. You just picked the easier path." She grabbed her bags and brushed past him. He didn't reach out to stop her. He knew if he did, he'd only be proving her right. "Zora?" She stopped at the top of the stairs, still facing away. "If you ever need anything, I won't." "I know. I'm saying it anyway." She didn't answer, just walked down the stairs and out the front door of a house that had never been a home, no matter how many rooms it held or how much money filled them. Roman watched from the window as her cab pulled away. There went the only person who'd ever really seen him, who'd caught glimpses of him softening up, even if it never closed the gap between them. Over the next few years, Zora didn't just move on. She cut every last tie. She never picked up his calls, sent his letters back unopened, changed her number, just in case he tried again. She graduated at the top of her class, clerked for a federal judge who noticed that same stubborn will Roman once saw in a hungry kid in an alley, and started building a reputation. Fair, sharp, impossible to buy off. Everything she'd spent her life wishing her family had been. Roman read about her in the papers. Quietly proud, always from a distance. He never reached out, Not after that last day in her old room. No one saw it coming. Not him, not her. The day their paths finally crossed again, inside a federal courtroom. Roman's life hanging by a thread, and Zora standing at the bench, holding the gavel. The decision was hers now. The fire didn't wait for anyone. It broke out just after midnight in the old textile district, hungry and unpredictable. By the time the first fire trucks rolled in, 3 city blocks were already lost. The flames leapt from rooftop to rooftop, almost like they knew where to go next, faster than anyone could stop them. By sunrise, 11 people were dead, dozens more hurt, and the heart of the commercial strip was smoking rubble. Rebuilding it would take years. But that comes later. Right now, the city buzzed with anger, looking for someone to blame before the ashes even cooled. And Councilman Davis Whitfield knew exactly what to do with a mob like this. He'd give the people their scapegoat and keep the real guilty parties safe, all without missing a beat. "We need a name by tonight," Whitfield snapped, pacing behind a heavy office door that smelled faintly of cigars and the sort of corruption that never left a paper trail. "The city wants revenge, and I'd prefer it wasn't pointed at me." Across from him sat Corbin Vale, calm, almost amused, like he'd already solved the problem and now just had to wait for everyone else to catch up. "It won't be your head," Vale said. "It'll be Greer's." "Roman Greer didn't order this," Whitfield shot back. "He doesn't have to have ordered it. He just needs to look like the kind of man who would." Whitfield hesitated, studying Vale, chewing on the weight of their plan. "So we frame a man for killing 11 people?" Vale didn't blink. "We don't need to build a monster. The public already believes in one. Roman Greer spent 15 years becoming the city's favorite villain. All we're doing is letting that reputation do the heavy lifting." And honestly, from there, it took almost nothing. They pushed a few fake shipping records through a mess of shell companies, just enough breadcrumbs, all leading back to some warehouse Roman used years ago for other business, paid off a few witnesses, leaked some anonymous tips to hungry reporters who cared more about headlines than facts. By the end of the day, Roman's arrest was inevitable. When federal agents banged on Roman Greer's door, the whole city already thought he was guilty. And the truth? It didn't matter anymore, not when the story fit so perfectly with what everyone expected from a man like him. "You've got the wrong guy," Roman said calmly, as agents cuffed his wrists. He watched them tear apart his house, hunting for evidence that didn't exist, because, for once, he actually hadn't done this crime. "Save it for your lawyer, Greer." "I never touched that building," he said. "I've never had business in that district." "Tell it to the paper trail," the agent shot back, not even looking up. Roman set his jaw, frustration simmering. He'd done plenty in his life to deserve jail, but getting locked up for something he hadn't touched? That stung. "Whoever built that trail knew exactly what they were doing," Roman muttered. The agent barely cared. He'd heard every flavor of denial from crooks before. Everybody's innocent until the evidence says otherwise. "The evidence is garbage," Roman spat. "That's for a jury," the agent shrugged. As agents dragged him outside, the glow from flashing cameras hit hard, paparazzi fighting for the best shot. Roman Greer, the city's favorite monster, finally caught. That photo would run everywhere by morning. Easy story. But nobody bothered with the actual truth. Roman was nowhere near that warehouse when it burned. He'd been 3 miles away, playing peacemaker for his own people, trying to break up a fight between his own associates before things got bloody. He actually stopped another fire that night. The irony wasn't lost on him as he sat in the back of the federal car, watching his house fade into the city lights. For once, he'd tried to do the right thing, and it might ruin him anyway. Word of his arrest shot through the city, fast as the fire itself. It reached Zora hundreds of miles away, sitting in her chambers, her hands icy on the morning paper. Local crime boss Roman Greer charged in deadly arson that killed 11. She read the headline once, twice, 3 times, before it really landed. Old memories crawled out. The smell of his cologne in a hallway, his voice breaking the silence on the other side of her bedroom wall. Every argument they'd ever had about all the blood she believed stained his hands. Part of her wasn't surprised. There was always that voice, bitter and tired, telling her this was the only way his story could end. But the other part, the one she thought she'd left behind, ached for the man who once gave her his coat in an alley, who now faced dying in a cell. What she didn't know yet, what Roman didn't know either, was that fate was about to pull her right into the middle of his case. She'd be forced to ask herself, again and again, what justice really means, and what she actually felt, even after all these years. If you're still with me, wondering how these two are going to tangle in that courtroom, don't go anywhere. The next chapter of this story is about to push Roman even deeper into the fire, before his story finally turns. The holding cell reeked of bleach and stale sweat. Roman knew the routine. He'd spent enough time in places like this to know how long it takes before the air starts pressing in, not just on your body but your mind too. But this time hit differently. It took a few days before he could put his finger on why. It wasn't the concrete and steel. It wasn't even the stack of charges piled high enough to guarantee he'd die in here long before his sentence ran out. It was the sinking realization that Zora must have seen the headlines by now, and she probably believed every word. "You've got a visitor," a guard called, snapping open the tiny window on the door. Roman glanced up, felt a flicker of something like hope, then tried to stamp it out. "Who?" "Lawyer." Hope vanished. Roman stood and followed the guard past rows of identical doors to the cramped interview room. Priya Osei sat waiting for him, her glasses low on her nose and a heavy folder open in front of her. The lines on her face said she was sharp, but tired. "They have you tied to shipping manifests, a witness who's ready to flip, and enough circumstantial crap to bury you twice. None of it's true. I believe you." That made him pause. Not just the words, but the way she said them. "You believe me?" She looked at him, steady. "I've defended a lot of guilty men, Roman. You can spot the difference between somebody protesting because he got caught and somebody protesting because it just isn't true. Doesn't matter unless a jury believes it. It does matter. I'll make sure they see it." Roman leaned back, his bones heavy with exhaustion. This kind went deeper than lack of sleep. "You know what the worst part is? Tell me. I've done things that make this jury lose their lunch. I've ordered hits, and I didn't lose sleep over them. But I never touched that district. I never gave that order. 11 people are dead because someone needed a monster, and I'm easy to point to." Priya shut her folder and studied him for a moment. He knew that look, weighing whether or not to believe in a man already known for dirty hands. "There's still a code, even with people like me. You don't torch a building full of working folks. You don't hurt civilians who have nothing to do with any of this. Whoever did this, they didn't know the code, and I'm the one taking the blame. We'll fight back. My team's already digging into who actually accessed those routes. That won't change anything." "Why not?" His jaw tightened. This was the first time she'd seen something other than defiance on his face. "Because the only opinion that still matters already turned against me a long time ago. This just proves she was right." Priya didn't have to ask who he meant. Roman's story, and Zora's, had already traveled through every legal backroom in the city. Plenty of people whispered about the Mafia boss's daughter, who ditched everything and climbed the bench as one of the toughest young judges in the system. "You think she's seen the news? Everyone's seen the news? You tried reaching out?" He laughed, low and flat. "She hasn't picked up a call from me in 6 years. She's not about to start now." "She might surprise you." He shook his head. "She stopped surprising me the day she left and never looked back. She drew her line in the sand, and I get it." Later that night, Roman lay staring at the ceiling, replaying every blaring headline. All of them painted him as a monster who torched a building full of people just to send a message. He'd built his life on being feared. Now that same fear was set to bury him for a crime he'd never committed. Dying in a cell? That part he'd already made his peace with. He'd always known how things might end. What kept him up was thinking about Zora, wondering if she told herself, seeing those stories, that she'd been right about him all along, that the man who once knelt beside her in some forgotten alley and handed her an apple had finally shown his real face to the world. All he really wanted now was a shot at the truth, not to save his own neck, but to salvage whatever tiny sliver of respect she might still have for him, buried under all those years of anger. What Roman didn't know, fate wasn't done with him yet. Pretty soon, it'd hand him a chance to say everything he'd never managed, in the very last place he ever expected to see her. If you think you're ready for what happens when Roman walks into that courtroom, brace yourself. What happens next is where everything turns on its head. The courthouse felt like a hive. Reporters crowded every step outside, cameras catching every moment the transport van rolled in. You could feel it. The city had already made up its mind about Roman, long before the trial started. He kept his gaze straight ahead as the marshals walked him inside, shackles jangling with every step, just in case he forgot for even a second he wasn't in charge of anything anymore. Move it, Greer. He didn't bother fighting them. Arguing had never helped, and honestly, his mind was 100 miles away, mostly replaying what Priya had told him the night before. Some judge swap, all last minute. No reason given, nobody cared to explain. They swapped judges on us. When? 2 days ago. Some new appointment. I'm still trying to get the details. He'd shrugged it off then. Judges were just judges to a man who expected to lose, no matter who sat up there. Inside, they put him at the defense table. They loosened his shackles, just enough for him to sit kind of straight. Not that dignity meant much with a marshal breathing down his neck. The gallery hummed, journalists everywhere, spectators filling every seat, all hungry for the show Roman never wanted to star in. All rise. Everybody did, so he did too, eyes glued to that small door next to the bench. His stomach twisted itself into knots. Dying, he'd accepted, but this drawn-out uncertainty was torture. Then the door opened. For a second, his brain just refused to work. He honestly thought maybe the pressure, the exhaustion, had gotten to him. Maybe he was hallucinating. Zora walked out, black robes, face unreadable, eyes scanning the courtroom with the kind of practiced calm only years of keeping secrets could teach you. Roman almost buckled. Wasn't the shackles. It was her. The Honorable Judge Zora Greer presiding. The bailiff's words just washed over him. All Roman saw was Zora sitting behind that bench. Zora, who once called him a stranger, who once thanked him for tuition money like it was the tiniest olive branch. Now she held the power to decide if he ever walked outside again. She hadn't looked at him, not once. Was she being kind, or was she just letting him twist? The hearing started. Roman stared at her, desperate for any sign of the girl he remembered, the one standing in a filthy alley, clutching a stolen apple like it was life itself. He found nothing but professionalism, cold, precise, and somehow crueler than if she'd just glared. Mr. Greer, you understand the charges? Her voice cut through the courtroom, steady and cold. She'd said worse things to him before, but those words, now, hurt more than any accusation he'd faced all trial. 6 years, and this was how she finally spoke to him. No trace of that old warmth, just a judge talking to a defendant. I understand them. And how do you plead? Not guilty. Her face didn't twitch. Pen moved across paperwork, business as usual, as if he was just another name on her docket. He'd expected fear, hostility, maybe even a little satisfaction in her eyes at getting to judge him at last. But this wall of nothing, felt somehow more final. Priya leaned in, barely whispering. She hasn't looked at you once. I noticed. That could be good. Maybe she's playing it straight. Maybe the past doesn't matter here. Or she's already decided and doesn't need to look. Priya went quiet. Roman turned back to the bench, watching Zora talk to the prosecution in that same controlled tone, revealing nothing of what she was really thinking. The prosecutors kicked things off, painting him as a monster, someone who wouldn't blink before setting a whole city on fire. Roman barely listened. He stared at Zora instead, searching for cracks. He found none. Well, maybe he caught the tiniest flicker. Her knuckles had gone pale against the bench, gripping a little too tightly, the smallest hint that, under all that armor, she was struggling too. He couldn't tell if she was close to shattering, or if the day's surprises had just started. He didn't know what else was about to walk through those doors and blow open whatever he thought he knew about this trial. If you're holding your breath along with Roman, stay with us. The truth is coming, and nothing about this day will ever be the same again. 3 days into the trial, Priya stood up with a folder Roman hadn't seen before. The way she squared her shoulders set off alarms in his head. This was not what they'd planned last night. Your Honor, the defense would like to call an unscheduled witness. The prosecution jumped on that instantly, a lot of shuffling papers and whispered arguments, but Judge Zora didn't blink. Her voice, calm and sharp, sliced through the noise. And why is this witness just now being introduced? Your Honor, we just got this evidence 48 hours ago. It's directly tied to where my client was the night of the fire. The charges couldn't be more serious. Justice means we have to hear it. Zora stared at Priya, face unreadable. She glanced, almost accidentally, at Roman, who, at this point, couldn't bother hiding how desperate he was. I'll allow it. The witness was a quiet guy named Felix Okafor, a private security contractor who'd been on a totally unrelated job the night the fire broke out. Nothing suspicious about him, just a man doing surveillance work for some other client. Mr. Okafor, can you tell the court what your equipment picked up that night? My cameras were out near the old freight yard, about 3 miles from the textile district. I was working a different case, nowhere near the fire itself. And what did the recordings show? Felix tapped on his tablet, and the screens in the courtroom lit up. There was grainy, time-stamped footage, clear enough to see a man who looked a lot like Roman weaving between 2 cars, waving his arms and arguing with a few other guys. That's Mr. Greer, correct? Yes. And what is he doing? Based on both the audio and the routing logs we pulled later, Mr. Greer was trying to stop a shipment of accelerant from being rerouted toward the textile district. There was a quick, stunned wave of whispers from the gallery. Roman's pulse hammered in his ears. He could barely hear the next few questions. Explain what you mean by rerouted. The logs show the shipment was supposed to go to an industrial demolition site outside the city, completely above board. Someone changed the routing instructions less than 6 hours before the fire, sending it to the textile district. Mr. Greer's phone records show he got an alert, and right away, he sent people to intercept the shipment. Did he stop it in time? Felix hesitated for just a second, eyes darting to Roman. Not entirely. He managed to stop about 60%. The rest had already been delivered by the time his people showed up. The prosecution tried to object, but what really mattered was already out, staring everyone in the face. This footage, these logs, they were evidence nobody could ignore or explain away. Zora didn't move. She didn't even write, her pen poised above her notes. Roman watched her closely and saw something change, a tiny crack in her perfect mask. Your Honor, the defense moves to enter this footage and the digital logs into evidence. So ordered. When Zora spoke, her voice broke a little. It was subtle. Probably nobody else even heard it. But Roman did. He would always hear it. 20 years of knowing every version of her voice left no room for doubt. The prosecution tried to poke holes in Felix's story, but the facts stuck. The logs, the footage, Roman's phone records, everything lined up, showing that on the night 11 people died, Roman Greer was 3 miles away, fighting to stop it. Roman couldn't stop watching Zora. She ran her hand over the papers in front of her composure fading, her fingers trembling. When she glanced up, her eyes glistened with tears she was fighting to hide, but one slipped down her cheek before she could wipe it away. For a second, the Judge Zora Greer everyone knew was gone. In her seat was the girl Roman remembered, a girl who'd once taken an enormous risk and trusted someone the world told her was dangerous. She dragged her cuff across her cheek, but the damage was done. Everyone saw. Roman saw. She cleared her throat, forcing her voice back into that measured, professional tone. The court will take a brief recess. Her gavel struck hard, loud enough to make people jump. She stood and swept out, robes trailing behind her, not once looking back. Roman sat frozen. His hands shook in his lap as the whole thing replayed in his head. The single unguarded moment, the sheer relief, and something that looked suspiciously like joy on the face of the woman who'd once told him she stopped caring. For the first time since they arrested him, Roman let himself believe he might just walk out of that courtroom a free man. But what really made his chest ache wasn't the hope of freedom. It was seeing Zora cry, evidence that under 2 decades of anger and absence, she'd never stopped hoping he was better than everyone else thought. Zora came back to the bench 20 minutes later, her composure mostly put back together, though Roman could still see the hint of red around her eyes. No amount of professionalism could hide all of it. Given the evidence, and no credible link tying Mr. Greer to the arson's planning or ignition, this court finds there's no grounds to proceed with these charges. At the prosecution's table, people muttered and pushed back, but Zora pressed on, her voice calm and unwavering, even if Roman knew she must be fighting for every steady word. The charges against Roman Greer are dismissed. Mr. Greer, you're free to go. With a sharp crack, the gavel came down. It rang out, not just in the courtroom, but through Roman, cutting through 20 years of guilt and 3 weeks of dread, all of it breaking apart in one clean moment. He barely noticed the marshal coming to unlock his shackles. The cuffs dropped from his wrists. After weeks locked up, he was a free man again, but really, Freedom didn't matter as much as the one thing he wanted in that room. He didn't head for the doors, where Priya waited and finally let herself smile. Instead, he turned toward the bench. Mr. Greer. The bailiff's warning wasn't loud, but it hung in the air. Don't approach judicial staff. Roman ignored it, walking slowly, showing he was no threat, making sure Zora could see he meant every step. It's all right, Zora said, quiet but certain enough to hush the room. Roman stopped, just in front of her, close enough to see how exhausted she really was, and how tightly she held herself together. You didn't have to recuse yourself, he said. Not the first thing he meant to say, but old habits die hard. I know, she replied. Why didn't you? Her hands tightened, knuckles white. I told myself I could be impartial, and I was. You did more than that. You saved my life in there. The evidence saved you. I just read it right. That almost made him smile. Zora, blunt as ever, not hiding behind her robe or her title. I didn't do it, Zora. I know you've probably heard that line 100 times from men who were guilty, but I need you to hear it from me. I never touched that district. I know. You believe me? Her composure broke, tears she'd been holding back spilling over as she looked at him across all these years. For 20 years, I believed the worst about you. I made peace with that, or I told myself I had. Then I sat up here and watched proof, real proof, that when it counted, when lives were on the line, you tried to stop it. I couldn't stop all of it, but you tried. That counts, Roman. It does. Roman felt something loosen inside, a tension he'd carried so long he almost didn't notice it until it snapped free. I've done bad things in my life, Zora. I won't hide from that, especially not with you, but I never crossed that line. I'm no monster who'd burn people alive. I know that now. So, does that change anything? Zora wiped her face, glancing at the courtroom, at the reporters and audience who'd stuck around, watching just as closely as they had during the trial. I don't know. That's fair. I spent so long hating what I thought you were, I never let myself think about what it'd be like if you weren't that. Not really. I'm still the man who built that empire, Zora. I can't just erase it. I know, but I'm tired of being that man. He surprised himself saying that, feeling years of rationalizations and old defenses fall away with a single line, one he'd never admitted to her, or anyone else. What are you saying? I'm saying, when I saw you cry over evidence that proved I hadn't been a monster, it hit me. I don't want to spend whatever years are left giving you new reasons to expect the worst from me. Zora studied him for a long, quiet moment. The rest of the courtroom faded away, leaving only the two of them, the long space between them slowly shrinking. Uncertain, but very, very real. I can't make any promises, Roman. I'm not asking for any, not yet. But I'm not walking away either. He let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. The feeling, it was relief, hope, maybe both. There hadn't been anything like it. Not since that alley a lifetime ago. Neither of them noticed the reporter in the back, typing away, already turning their words into the next big headline. And neither could guess that what came next, Roman's next play, all the resources he still had, would put their words to the real test, whether what started in a courtroom could become something real outside of it. 3 weeks out from that courtroom, Roman found himself at the head of a table, surrounded by men who'd helped him build an empire over nearly 20 years. Today was different. For the first time ever, he was about to tear it all down. You're joking. Dominic said it flatly, staring at Roman like he'd just suggested a quilting club instead of running their usual operations. The same ones that made everyone in that room rich, far beyond what any of them thought possible growing up. I'm dead serious, Roman replied. Dominic just shook his head. You almost did time for a crime you didn't even commit, and your answer is to give up everything we fought to protect? Roman leaned forward. My answer is, I almost lost the only person whose opinion matters to me. I don't plan on coming that close again. Silence. You could practically hear the years hanging in the air, all those wars with rival crews, cops kicking down doors, the betrayals, the violence. Roman surveyed their faces, men who'd followed him into hell and back, and was surprised to find he didn't hesitate at all. Starting today, it's over. All the illegal stuff, the warehouses, shipping routes, protection contracts, everything. We close it down. Dominic's skepticism didn't crack. And the guys who depend on this to feed their families? What happens to them? Roman had chewed on that one for nights, eyes red at dawn. Everyone here who wants a real, above-board job can have one. I'm turning our properties into affordable housing, starting with the textile district after the fire. We'll use our resources to rebuild what we destroyed. Dominic stared. That'll wipe you out. Roman didn't even blink. It already has, just in a different way. But this, I can live with. The road wasn't smooth, not even close. It didn't all wrap up in a few weeks, like in a softer story. Some guys bailed, walking away instead of giving up easy money and power for the mess and uncertainty of a normal life. A couple pushed back, testing whether Roman's spine had softened along with his conscience. He had to remind them, walking away from violence didn't mean he'd forgotten how to stand his ground. One old supplier stormed into Roman's new office, still expecting the old rules. You really think you close up shop and nobody comes looking for you? You owe people, Roman. Roman didn't flinch. I've paid every debt, but I'm done hurting people. If that costs me old relationships, so be it. So that's how it went. Slow, steady, exhausting. Roman rebuilt from the ground up. Warehouses that once held who knows what now became community housing projects. He swapped protection rackets for legit construction contracts. Every day meant permits, inspections, and legal squabbles. None of it glamorous. And at night he'd sit with nothing but paperwork and doubts, wondering if any of this mattered to the only person he really wanted to reach. Then, about 4 months after the trial, he heard a knock he wasn't expecting. Zora stood there on his doorstep, not in court robes, just simple clothes, her face unreadable, maybe even more so than it was from the bench. I've heard about what you're doing, she said. News gets around, Roman replied quietly. She cracked a tiny smile. I still read the news, you know. He stepped aside to let her in, heartbeat racing, not from fear of agents or rivals, but because she might be about to say none of this mattered. I'm not doing this for attention, Zora. I didn't think you'd show up to congratulate me. Good, she said, because I didn't. Roman braced himself, but her tone didn't hold quite the chill it used to. I came to see for myself. Not headlines, not statements. I wanted to know if it's real. She looked around, blueprints for housing on his desk, and a framed photo he couldn't bring himself to throw out. A little girl, 8 years old, clutching an apple outside a mansion she'd never really called home. It's real, Zora said. Relief nearly knocked Roman off his feet for the second time in his life, and this time, there were no shackles or judge's gavel. I'm not asking you to forgive 20 years all at once. She nodded. I know. I'm asking for a chance to keep showing you who I'm trying to be, one day at a time, for as long as it takes. Zora watched him for a long moment. Something changed in her expression, softened. In its place, hope sparked, flickering to life for the first time since that dark alley a lifetime ago. Then get to work, Roman. I'll be watching. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. They both knew some debts need more than just a conversation to repay. But standing there in an office built on the ruins of everything he used to be, Roman finally understood that redemption wasn't a single verdict handed down in a courtroom. It was a choice he'd have to keep making every single day, for as long as it took to earn back the one thing his empire had never been able to buy him. If this story moved you the way it moved us, drop a comment telling us your favorite moment, hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next journey we bring you, and share this with anyone who still believes it's never too late to change.